welcome back to Timberline Tactical. So we're going to talk, got gear falling over. We're going to talk today about our loadout gear, right? So specifically what I want to talk about is battle belts, right? So our war belts or whatever the hell you decide to call them. I'm actually going to show you guys here how to actually set them up and what your setup ideally should look like, what things to consider. Now, I brought my plate carrier out here, or one of my plate carriers out here, because I wanted y'all to kind of see some of this as well, so that you can see kind of how this is set up. We're going to go over all this in a separate video, but we'll dive here into the battle belts. Before we get to that, let's kind of determine what this is used for. So, from our standpoint, I use this battle belt mostly for instructing, right? So it's something I need to be reasonably comfortable, but I use it for instructing. These are pretty popular with military guys, guys that specifically if you see guys that are carrying a pistol, so if they're like NCOs or officers, or any type of special operations, or even just like Cow Scouts, stuff like that. These are pretty popular using some type of battle belt. This is the one I had in Afghanistan. I did not wear it all the time when I went on a patrol. A lot of times I just wore my vest because I actually didn't have a pistol when I was in Afghanistan. I gave my pistol to my medic. So it's just kind of it's really a mission specific thing. As far as what we use them for now, right? What are the likelihoods? Well, there's a couple different arguments. Cops don't use them, right? Cops use a duty belt, and they might use them if they're on a SWAT team or something like that. But otherwise, they're going to be using their duty belt. We don't see much need for it in civilian world, short of zombies coming in some type of apocalypse. It would be very unlikely that we'd ever use this. One thing that you can set this up for that I think makes some sense is to actually set it up for that kind of bump in the night. So you can call it your bump belt at that point in time, but then you throw things like handcuffs on there or zip ties. This is to take care of something. So that way you always have something ready. You can strap it on, and whether you're running outside in just your underwear, you've got everything that you need right there. Your tourniquet gun, knife, zip ties, spare ammo, flashlight, etc. You have it all on that belt. That makes some sense. I don't necessarily agree with that. I use a flak vest. So like our idea of like a bump in the night, this is set up. This has, it has a flashlight on it. It has the medical kit, spare magazines, everything that I need to go and deal with that bump in the night. So, but like I said, the reality of me actually putting this on to go check it out, it's pretty slim. 9 times out of 10, I'm just going to grab my pistol and go look. And that's what most people are going to do. So it's better in a lot of ways that we look at the reality of this. We're probably not going to kit up unless we know for a fact that something is out there. So let's dive into this. Let's dive into exactly how we want to set this up. Let me move this plate carrier out of the way. Guys, excuse the construction mess that you see around here. We're still under construction for our classroom. So let's start it from this side actually here. Let me do this first before we do anything else. Let's go ahead and just clear that gun, get that out of the way. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, I carry a Shadow Systems MR920. This is one of my favorite pistols. We can go more in depth about why I carry this size gun here in a little bit, but let's look at how we want to start this thing. So the first thing that we want to look at is what kind of belt do we want. You can see this one here. This is a padded belt. You'll hear them called pussy pads or whatever they want to call it. This one's made by VTAC, Viking Tactical. This was bought a long time ago, so I don't know if they still make this, or I'm sure they've updated. And then inside we have our inner kind of hardened belt. This is it has that rigid plastic in there, Cobra buckles on it, and then a D-ring. Now the D-ring, here's the thing with the D-ring, guys. If you're buying some cheap D-ring belt and you're trying to rappel off of it, you are going to die. But the idea really with these D-rings is not even so much for rappelling, because where the weight sits, actually, as you're rappelling, it would be sitting in the wrong part of your body. So yeah, it would work in a pinch, but you'd actually be better off making like a Swiss seat or something. Really what this is for is actually hooking yourself in. Like if you're a door gunner on a chopper or something like that, you could hook yourself in, and have that secondary retention there, or even just on a striker if you want to clip yourself in. When I went over there, it was getting more and more common for people to actually have these big seatbelt harnesses. But before that, guys used to actually clip themselves in with these, and that way, if there was a vehicle issue, it wouldn't eject them from the vehicle. This would stop them. So, like I said, this is not really designed for rappelling. Would I advise you to get one with a D-ring? Sure, because it's not really that expensive. If you don't have one with a D-ring, I would not trade out what you got. I do keep a carabiner on there. Again, the idea that you could rappel, fast rope, something like that. But really, this is to clip yourself in. Anymore, it just stays on there because I like it. It's not really that practical from an instructor standpoint, but it stays on there. Okay, so next, moving over, I use Blade Tech holsters. Now, you can use whatever holsters you want to use. There's lots of different ones. You can use cloth ones. You can use Kydex ones. I prefer Kydex ones, but if you use Kydex ones, you have to get a decent quality one because cheap ones tend to crack when you train with them. Blade Tech makes some decent quality ones. There are better ones. The one thing to remember, this gear is gear that gets used. So if I'm going to use this gear, then I need to look at it a little bit differently. My competition holsters are substantially different. My competition holsters cover like the bottom half of the magazine like that. They have big flared lips on them, and it's so that I can put magazines back in them real fast when I'm doing a attack reload during the competition. The simple fact is that is not a type of holster that I want to use on a battle belt like this because I need something with a little bit more retention and a little bit more girth to grab those magazines with. So that's what I'm looking at with something like this. Is I want some good retention. I want quality Kydex or cloth. G-Code makes some phenomenal ones. G-Code actually has some options that you can put an RTI attachment here and here, and you can swap these out. So if you're shooting if you have a 40 cal pistol or a 45 or a 9mm, you can swap out different mag holsters. It actually makes it really nice. Now, moving on, I do carry a spare M4 mag. Now, one of the reasons I carry a spare M4 mag is because this allows me to have my loadout without having double stack magazines on my chest. So if I want to have a full battle rattle, a full combat load of 7 magazines, this allows me to not have to double up, whereas I would have to if I didn't have this. That's one reason. The other reason is that because your belt is kind of your last ditch effort, right? So if you think about, we live from our packs, we survive from our, we fight from our vest, we survive from our belt. I want to have this here as my last ditch effort of survival. Now, one thing that I'll note, as you can see, I've got, and it's hard to see because they're black on black, but I've got zip ties here on everything. So everything on my kit gets zip tied down. So that way, I've been around way too many times where people have broken gear or lost gear or something like that because it wasn't zip tied. Screws back out. All my screws are Loctited, or actually I use Rock Set now. But you really want to make sure that you zip tie or 550 cord all of your equipment on here. So definitely take a look at that. And then what you want to do actually is in between some of these is you want to make sure that you're zip tying the belt, the webbing to the inner belts, and that actually keeps it a little bit more rigid as long as the belt provides you the capabilities to do that. So magazines, obviously right-handed or shooting right-handed, they go on my left side. I do leave a little bit of space here. I can pop another spare mag carrier here for my M4 if I was going to be really, really heavy on the M4. The one thing is I really like the Blade Tech ones because the Blade Tech ones hook on the actual inner belt, and so it slides it down. If it's a molly webbing one, the magazines tend to sit up about here instead of being down here. I need this to ride a little bit lower, and you can see it's barely over the top of the belt in the back, so this actually rides below my plate carrier. So anything that I'm putting on, I want to make sure that it rides below the plate carrier, and so that this Blade Tech one actually allows you to do that. Anything that I put on this molly webbing, I find has a very bad tendency of rubbing that plate carrier. Now, moving over, we've got our tourniquet here. Now, you'll notice I don't carry an IFAK here. Now, I do have an IFAK that I'll occasionally put on when I'm in instructor mode, and that is specifically for, it'll have some gunshot trauma stuff in there. It's mostly to have Band-Aids and stuff while I'm out there, but I keep a lot of that stuff in my range box, so I don't, as a general rule, worry about it too much on my belt. I don't keep it on my belt for patrolling purposes or anything like that, simply because having stuff on your back is really, really difficult. It makes it hard to get in and out of vehicles unless it's very well balanced. So you can see these two actually kind of balance each other. They put it at opposite ends of my hips, and so they both dig in the same, so it allows me to actually sit in a vehicle fairly comfortably with plate carrier on and everything. Whereas if you have this IFAK back here, it tends to push into that. So do they look cool? Yes, they're kind of nice to have. I agree that from a tactical standpoint, having having an IFAK on your belt is probably the best option. The only problem is that it's very difficult to find a place to put it where it actually would allow you to do mounted patrols and stuff like that. Now, the one thing to remember is that if you're talking about if you're getting ready to deploy or something like that, you can plan your equipment towards your mission. So if I knew I was going to be doing a lot of mounted patrols on this tour versus dismounted patrols on another tour, I would make some slight adjustments to my gear to make sure that I was going to be comfortable and satisfied for those 9 months. So, or year, however long your deployment is. The simple fact is that if you're doing a lot of time in vehicles, you don't want anything on your back. But the one goal is that all of our kit, all of our gear stays streamlined. So you can see I have very little on here. This is kind of the bare minimum. Any more than this, I would have to use these suspender hookups and actually have suspenders underneath my plate carriers. I don't want to get that much weight on that. So keep that in mind, guys, that we want to keep our gear as streamlined as possible. And truthfully, if I was actually patrolling, I'd probably unhook that D-ring, guys. It's not worth the weight. It's absolutely not needed. Okay. So tourniquets, next thing over, like I said, again, there's different tourniquet options out there, different tourniquet holsters. This is a Kydex one. There are cloth ones. It's 6 to 1, half a dozen together on a tourniquet. One thing I will tell you, if you're going to use a Kydex one, actually, and I was looking for a rubber band before I did this video, but you actually take a rubber band and put it on the top and put it all the way around the bottom here. And if you have to, take a file and carve a little notch down here in the bottom of this, so that way that rubber band will actually hold your tourniquet in. What you'll find is that if you're training or something like that, these tourniquets and the Kydex ones have a tendency of popping out, regardless of how you get them in there. So, and then if you're using them for training and taking them in and out, they never get put back in there, right? So make sure you guys throw that rubber band around there. It is just a safety catch on there, and it's easy enough to break it with one hand or the other. So you don't even have to like take it off. If you actually need to use it, just rip it out and break it. It's one of the options that we actually used to do when I was in Afghanistan. We actually used to have tourniquets, and we would instead of even putting them in a tourniquet holster, we would actually just rubber band them to our kit. And I'd have one on the center of my chest in my plate carrier. All my guys had one in the center of their chest. That way I can reach it with both hands. And then you could put one, you could put one on your belt or wherever, however you want to do it. But you want your tourniquet to be reachable with both hands. So this one is a little bit hard for my left hand to get to, but it can reach it going back behind my back. With that rubber band on there, I can pull it out. Now the next thing that we have is we have our knife. Now, knives on battle belts are fighting knives. They are combat knives. I carry a Leatherman in my pocket. That is my utility knife. That is my pocket knife. That is doing everything that I need it to do. The one that's on my belt is specifically a fighting knife. Now, remember, there's a couple principles that we want to keep employed in this. One is lethal force is always on the same side, so that way I know anything I'm grabbing over here is lethal. It's a training thing, so especially if you're a police officer, so you wouldn't put your taser on the same side as your gun, because there's in a high stress situation, it's way too easy to grab your gun instead of your taser, or vice versa, and so obviously that creates some problems. So lethal over here, non-lethal or less lethal would go over here. So baton, tasers, etc. on that side. So that is why you do need to practice some ambidexterity in your training. But let's look at knives. So I like push daggers. To me, push daggers are a perfect option. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, the handle actually stays out of the way. You can see a handle like this rides low and rides below my plate carrier. If you have a knife that tends to stick up, they tend to run into your plate carrier. And so a big pig sticker knife, they're not super practical. And again, they tend to run into your gear when you're running a lot of gear. So you want this stuff really streamlined. The guys that you see that were outside the wire, that were doing lots of patrolling, their gear is streamlined and it makes sense. It might have taken them a while to get there, but they figured it out. The guys that don't roll outside the wire, you can always tell because their gear is a hodgepodge of bullshit and all sorts of crap that you don't need. I mean, I saw one guy used to carry a tomahawk when I was in Afghanistan. I was like, okay, I don't think he went on one mission the entire time we were there. So, streamline your kit and look at things like smaller knives, smaller defensive knives. These take very little training to use effectively, and they are incredibly dangerous, incredibly deadly. So push daggers to me are a kind of the gold standard when it comes to setting up your kit, combat knife, and everything. I think that those are just a great option. Big, massive knives, guys. It's just not something that people that actually operate to any extent, actually use. So I'm a huge fan of these. Again, you can see we got a zip tie on it right there. So the zip tie holds it in case that snap were to ever come undone. But it's held very well in place. There's very, very little play in that because of that zip tie. So it tightens it up, but it also tightens up my holster here. So my holster doesn't slide back and forth either. The holster, everything, all this is very, very tight and snug. So that's something that we really want to look at. Golly, these flies drive me crazy. Okay, so now let's look at the last thing. So this is our holster. If we use a G-code holster, I use G-code holster systems. These RTI mounting systems are great. So the holster comes off. I can slide whatever holster I want. So if I want to rock a Glock 17 for the day or something different, whatever it is, I just simply slide this off and slide it back on. The same attachment they can put over here for your magazine carrier so that you can have your magazine carriers on it. It does add a little bit of thickness to it. So that's the one downside on the on those types of mounts on your magazine carriers. I don't personally use them because everything I shoot is 9mm, and the double stacked Blade Tech holsters will work for a Smith & Wesson Shield or a Smith & Wesson M&P, or my Glock, or in this case, Shadow Systems. So G-code makes some great stuff. Again, make sure you're Loctiting all these screws and things down. As far as what holster to get, if you guys want to look at holsters, there's a lot of different options. You'll see they have ones that are big buckets that'll protect your optics and stuff like that. If you do get optics, you can see I'm not running optics right now. They have ones that have a retention clip on them, so you can get a little bit of extra retention. So if you were doing airborne missions, or if you were going to be fast roping or something like that, and you wanted a little bit more security on this, you could actually put that up. You'll see a lot of guys that were like old school Navy SEALs would actually take a bungee cord right here and something in a hole like that, and they'd flip it up over the handle while they were being inserted, and then once they got out of the water, then they'd pull that down, and so it was just a friction fit in. So there's lots of different options like that. And in this case, in this holster, if I was doing something really aggressive, that's what I would do. I would put a bungee cord right here, and it would come up over the handle to hold my gun down, and then at that point in time, once I was inserted, I would remove that bungee cord and have my gun out. That kind of wraps up as far as the belt. The last thing I will give you guys is, let's hit this pistol here. So you can see I carry, this is a Shadow Systems MR920, and I've been a huge fan of this pistol. This is what I compete with in competition. This is oftentimes a daily carry for me, though I generally carry a CR920. You can see I have a TLR7A weapon light on here because those are great weapon lights, and they don't extend past the end like a Surefire X300. This is the size of a Glock 19. Now, a Glock 19, though, technically is a compact gun, right? Glock calls it a compact. It's a full-size service pistol. This is not a compact gun by any means. This is a full-size service pistol. And you'll notice police departments oftentimes will issue something like a Glock 17, a full size. That's what they consider their full size gun. And that's a lot of weight. And you'll notice that guys that special operations communities and guys that are really doing a lot of patrols would actually prefer a Glock 19 because when you're out all day carrying this stuff around and you're really huffing it, and I'm not degrading cops by any means, but it's a different mission set that they're doing. They're driving around, they're going door to door. Yeah, they might have to hunt somebody down on foot, but the level of physical exertion is not the same as climbing through the mountains of Afghanistan, and so we lighten the load a little bit by putting a Glock 19 size gun on. Now, to clarify, because I don't want to mislead you all at all, I was not special operations. I did not. I was not an Army Ranger. I was not a Green Beret or anything like that. I was an infantryman. I was an infantry officer, and I worked a lot with small teams and special operations guys. But I was not one myself. So don't let me confuse you there by any of that. But I did learn an awful lot from those guys and working with them, and so I understand the reasons for this. And like I said, that was I had a very unique kind of mission set when I was in Afghanistan. So it was it definitely had the opportunity to work with a lot of those guys over there. So anyways, that's why I carry a Glock 19 size gun. I think this is a great gun for conceal and carry. I think it's a great gun for a duty rig. Compromises everywhere. You're either going to have to sacrifice on performance to get a little bit of a better weight, or you sacrifice and you get a little bit more weight to get a little bit better performance. take your pick on which way you want to go. Okay, guys, I realized that was a little bit longer video. Like I said, I really wanted to go over this battle belt. I've got another one coming. We're going to do the plate carrier here, and I'll show you guys how to set up a plate carrier properly. But remember, the goal here, streamline our equipment. Make this as simple and as fail-safe as possible, and get out there and use it. Get out there and train some. Chances are, none of us are ever going to don our battle belts for anything more than going to the range and shooting with our friends and having some fun. But we don't know that for a fact, and it's a lot of fun to go out and shoot. So mine is set up a little bit differently for an instructor. So you'll notice, like I said, I had the pussy pad on there, or that padded under belt. You don't have to get that. They do make a lot of difference when you're wearing that belt all day. So I would highly recommend that you do it. But if you want to tough it out and just have an uncomfortable belt, go nuts. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all watching. We will talk to you guys later.